he told me that he smelt marijuana and he didn't need a warrant and he was going to search the place anyway and that he didn't need one.
I'm Michelle Rice. I was here at the apartment of Joe and Jay Debbermans on February 4th, the early morning of their bust. I'm a neighbor. I was here using the computer. I am mentioned in the application of the warrant. It says Deputy Mullen then pursued Barton. Oh no, wait, I don't have to read that part yet. A female later identified as Michelle A. Rice. That's me. So I was here, and I was secured and taken in the police cars and then to the police station along with Joe Barton and Jay Debberman.
Let's take a look.
What, at this?
No, the door.
Okay. Just to verify who I am and how I'm a witness. All right, I'm doing my little part here in pointing out some misinformation that the police gave in trying to obtaining a warrant, and with the information they gave to the press release. Right here, this is the doorway to Joe Barton and Jay Debberman's apartment C2. And you'll see here what it says in the press release. Now, where is it? He's knocked on several apartments. Occupant of apartment 2C, later identified as Jay Debberman, answered the door, and deputies immediately noticed strong odor of marijuana emanating from the apartment. And this is further, right after that, note, deputies observed marijuana plants growing in the residence. Debberman then attempted to force the door closed. All right, now, note how it says here they observed marijuana plants. And they mentioned that before, mentioning that Debberman attempted to force the door closed. That they claim that they observed marijuana plants from when the officer was still in the door. Now, this is the doorway. Okay, he was just in the door. He wasn't even fully in the door, because it even says in the application, Debberman attempted to shut the door abruptly, but the door was stopped by Deputy Mullen's shoe.
See, what always bugged me about this is look at how difficult it is to maneuver.
Exactly,
I'll ask
exactly.
Jay about that later, because you didn't maneuver anything, right?
Well, no. By the time I had gotten to the door and everything, it was all, everything was kind of like, some of this might have fallen by then. And But anyway, his foot was in the door. And Jay was still trying to keep him out, even when I had gotten to the door. He was still in the doorway. And he even mentions here, even before that, in the application to the application for the warrant, where is it? Shoe, flail about, Yeah, Mullen's shoe. Deputy Mullen then observed marijuana plants in the residence. Debberman then began to flail about in what Deputy Mullen described as a fake seizure. Okay, I'll get to that later. But anyway, the point being, they still claim that before even getting in the door, by both the words...
Why don't you go behind me, because I don't want you on camera.
Okay. By both the words in the...
you can see how... you can't see anything from here. That's the point.
Exactly. There's no way, because as it turns out, Joe and Jay, it turns out, were growing their plants inside this closet.
Let's take a look at that. So you'd have to have
closet,
bionic
which
eyes
was closed,
that go around the corner.
And in that back room, which you cannot see from here. And the closets were closed, because whenever that night I was here, working on the computer, and other nights that I was here working on the computer, I didn't know they were growing marijuana plants, and they were back here, and I never noticed any marijuana plants growing.
Such a tiny space.
So, like, from the doorway, in which they claim they noticed the marijuana plants before even getting in the door, which, once again, they mentioned right after that, Jay then tried to force the door closed. There's no way they could have seen it.
And marijuana activists would never have pot out.
Exactly.
They all know their rights and stuff. And you can see this is all food.
Yeah, they didn't have any growing in the bathroom or in the hallway here or in these shelves.
Now, where's this pound supposed to be, Jay?
I didn't get the evidence worksheet yet. They said it was visible in the living room.
Here are the mailboxes for the apartment complex, and you can see there's C1, C2, C3 on the top, then there's the Ds. Then there's the A's and the B's on the bottom. These are all different buildings, and there's different units in the buildings. This is building A here. Oh no, sorry. This is building A. Okay, and then this is building B. This is the building where they actually got the call. Building B. Clearly marked. And here's where they wound up, building C, which is where Jay lives. Jay, I was just pointing out that they're different buildings.
Yeah, there's 4 of them.
And that's not even mentioned in the...
Yeah, and they say in the warrant it's the second building, which is B2, which is actually where
I know.
they were supposed to go. And they all said B2 when they came here. And then, you know,
yeah, but
they
it
came
wasn't
to the 3rd
mentioned.
building.
But I didn't see it.
C2.
Yeah, I didn't see it mentioned in the paperwork, the B and the...
Yeah, no, they said they didn't know which apartment they were looking for, but they specifically told me, Joe, and Michelle that they were looking for B2 when they were here.
They kept saying the number 2 is clearly seen and clearly visible, but more clear is C.
On the front of the building.
C, right here. So why did they not see that? So they went onto the wrong building, and they went up the steps. Mountain man. That's where they said the 2 was visible.
Yeah, right there.
They didn't realize they were in the wrong building
Let
though.
me get my ruler.
Now these were the curtains that I always felt was always a hassle to open.
Yeah, they were up at the time they
you could see how
entered.
they frayed. I remember you had that up for months.
But this one was here. But I just want to show. Here is a ruler. From the edge of the door, there is over about a 6.5 inch overlap. And basically, the officer put more than his foot in the door. He had his whole body in the doorway.
In order to...
But even a foot in the door is an entry. And I tried to close the door, and I was talking to the officer. But prior to that, I stepped outside and talked to the officer and closed the door behind me.
Can you sort of show how you did that? He was sort of standing where I was?
Yeah, I was standing here.
And then he came and sort of forced himself on you? God, it must have been icky.
Well, I asked him why he was here. And I asked him what building he was looking for, what apartment number, and who he was looking for. Wow. He told me he was looking for B2. And I pointed to the number here and told him, well, this is C2. And I told him he was at the wrong place. And he told me he smelled marijuana and he wanted to search the place. I told him that I asked him if he had a warrant, and he said that he didn't have a warrant. I told him, well, you must have a warrant. You can't search the place without a warrant.
So you had this conversation right here?
Yes.
Was he like in your face here?
He was standing right about where you are.
Okay. And then the door was closed. And then how did he do that? Oh, you tried to get back in the house.
Well, before that, he told me that he smelled marijuana. And he asked me to give him the marijuana then because I wouldn't let him search my apartment. And basically, I told him I didn't have any marijuana. And then he said he wanted to search the place anyway. And then he tried to get around me to open the door. And then I retreated back into the apartment and told him that he couldn't come in. He must have a warrant. And then I stood in the door here.
And he did
basically and tried to close it and stuff. And
about where was his foot?
He was standing right here like this. He wouldn't let me in.
Whoa.
Or he wouldn't let me close the door.
So he's very aggressive.
And he was sticking his nose in the door.
Right. Now.
And he had a foot in the door. And his nose.
So he's like right here?
Yeah.
And then he'd have to pull these aside. Did he pull them aside?
Well, no. I was standing here.
So like
this. And stuff. But even with them open, if you stand outside and go back and forth,
right?
You know, we'll stand right at the doorway. You know what I mean, without entering, and move the camera back and forth just to see how far you can see in, and even into the apartment. You actually really can't see much of anything.
No. No.
And even if you move the camera from side to side outside the doorway, can you? Well, from here, I mean. you know, you held the camera.
Here,
You know,
you do
right
it.
at
You
the
got
edge.
something in mind here.
Okay, I can't really. Hold on, I gotta come outside and see. Let me open this curtain just so you can see in the apartment. Oh, here. Let me move this curtain aside. If I put that curtain there, now, let me see. If you go from side to side here, which we're right at the edge of the doorway, you still can't see anything. And now, basically, wait here, you want to take that? I'll hold the ruler. Just so you can show at what point when you enter the house. Are you in the house yet?
No.
You're in the house now?
Slightly, yeah.
You're past the doorway.
Yeah, I got my toes over it.
Okay.
Then
And
you can
about
see
how
stuff.
far? You're about 6 inches in now? Or
Yeah.
7 inches?
Yeah.
How far in the doorway are you?
What do you think? See my shoulder here?
You're with the door frame or so?
Yep. Okay. I mean, you don't have to get micro-technical. You can't see anything.
But even if you come in here, now step in the doorway where you're completely in.
Okay, here I'm completely in. Now we're looking down the hall.
And by now you've entered the house
Yeah.
completely, your whole body.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still not much visible.
No. And that's what Michelle said. The pot that was growing here, he couldn't be able to see.
No, that's a 180-degree turn and it sets back further than the door. There's no possible physical way to see anything in that closet from outside.
And where's the picture of the pound of pot that they said was there?
We didn't get any photographic evidence from them yet.
I see.
I didn't get the evidence worksheet yet.
Okay.
Now I had some marijuana back here. I had some marijuana on this shelf here.
Okay. And here's where it was growing?
And that is Joe's room there, the door to Joe's room. And I had some plants in this room here.
Which is now your meditation room.
Yes, it's now a yoga and meditation room. He told me that he smelt marijuana and he didn't need a warrant and he was going to search the place anyway and that he didn't need one. And that is when I retreated back into the house and I stood in the doorway. Well, I retreated back into the house here and tried and closed it and he put his foot in the door and I stood blocking the view and argued with him and told him that he can't come in, he doesn't have a warrant, he must have a warrant.
So Jay, when you put up that big curtain months ago, I always had trouble maneuvering in and out, and you can see it's frayed. Can you say how you handled it when he said you didn't? He didn't need a warrant.
I just backed up and tried to close the door.
Oh, but see, here's that stuff there. Did that come out?
Did what come out?
Close the door. Okay. Okay, so you just close it over that cottony stuff. And so
Yeah, I
then,
wasn't as afraid before.
so you must have been freaked out when he said he didn't need a warrant.
Yeah, I was. He caused me to have a seizure when he forced an entry.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't close the door and he forced his way in and caused me to have a seizure because I couldn't stop him. And it's...
So did he, and now this time he's like in your face? And then what? Then you had scuffling around. Did Michelle see?
Michelle had heard the struggle at the door, and she had heard that I had stepped outside and closed the door behind me. And when she had heard the struggle at the door, she went and got my father. And then Michelle and my father came to the door to assist me.
So she went to get your dad?
Yes, she did.
Let's take a look at how far his place is. You want to go down and show? Or I'll follow? Okay, so that's...
But he was back in the bedroom, and she went and got him.
So Michelle at this point had gotten up from the computer to go and see, and then she called for Joe
Yeah.
to come in?
when he heard me arguing with the officer at the door about him not having a warrant and him not being able to come in, she went and got Joe.
Right.
Holding me when I became conscious, and my hand was still on the door. And then the officer stepped in the door, came in the door, and my father was telling him that he didn't belong in here. And when I became conscious, I told my father that he didn't have a warrant and he didn't belong in our house.
Okay, when Michelle called me, she yelled for me, and I came, and Jay was standing like this with the cop at the door, right? And then Jay's knees started to buckle, and I held Jay up like this, right? And the cop was pushed the door to here, and he was here, and I was here, holding Jay up, right? And I said to the cop, "What are you doing in my house? Do you have a warrant?" And he said, "I don't need a warrant." And I said, "You do need a warrant." And Jay came out of he was passing out, and he came out of it and said, "He don't have a warrant." And I said to him, "Get out of my house, you don't have a warrant." And he said to me, "I smell marijuana, you're all under arrest." That was what the cop said to me while I was holding Jay up against this rack. Right? Now he says from his position here, he could see marijuana. Now, there was marijuana growing in this closet, but both of these doors were shut, and I had my back to it. There was no possible way for him to see marijuana in this closet. No possible way. Okay, now, after Jay stepped outside onto the porch, and he was barefoot. And I said to the cop, "Let me get Jay's shoes." I came over here, right there, and grabbed Jay's shoes and handed them to Jay outside. The cop stayed right in the edge of the door, right? Then I had no shoes on, and I said, "I'm going back to get my..." He said, "You're all under arrest," at the door, right? And I got Jay his shoes. Then I said,
in the door at that point.
Then I said,
we were all under arrest.
Right, he said he smelled marijuana, we're all under arrest. Then I gave Jay his shoes. Jay was standing on the porch, and the cop was still in the door. I said, "I'm going back to get my shoes." And I went back. Now this curtain was up. And I walked through the curtain. And I went from here into here, and my shoes were over there in that corner, right?
Okay.
And I went over and picked up my shoes, and the cop came walking in that door.
When you were standing here?
When I was standing here, he came walking in
where Jay is.
He came walking in that door.
Okay.
Right? Now, he says in his paperwork that there was a pound of marijuana out in the living room. That's a lie. The pound of marijuana was sitting right here. Now, from the door, he couldn't have seen it, and show that curtain. That curtain has always been there. He couldn't have seen it. Now, when he came through here, Paula, when he came through here to see me, it's possible that he noticed the marijuana growing in this room.
Mm-hmm.
But by then he was already in the house and searching without a warrant.
Right. Okay.
There was no marijuana out in this room. Michelle was here at the computer.
That's what she'd come over to use.
She came over to use the computer. Mm-hmm. There was no marijuana out open in this room. Those doors were closed. That had a few small plants in it, and the larger plants, which weren't bigger than this, were in this room.
Yeah.
There's no possible way that cop can say, even though he was illegally in the house, there's no possible way he could have saw marijuana visible. Michelle didn't see it when she came. Many of my other friends have come here and not gone past this curtain, and that door's always been locked. Those doors have always been shut.
You mean here?
The closet doors.
These little tiny spaces.
And I had some plants in this room here.
Which is now your meditation room.
Yes, it's now a yoga and meditation room. I had some plants in this room here.
Which is now your meditation room.
Yes, it's now a yoga and meditation room.